Hi, everyone. I am Mary Ann McKibben Dana. I am a pastor serving a church in Herndon, Virginia. I am a writer. My most recent book is Hope, a User's Manual. And I am also a ministry and leadership coach. And it was a great joy and a wonderful challenge to work on the Do Not Fear foundational essay and to explore how we can move forward in faith, even in the midst of a fearful culture and anxious times. So now that we have tuned into God's presence and we have trusted in God's promises, the third aspect of our practice of do not fear is to take one step at a time. And this is where my love and affection for improvisation comes into play. I've done a great deal of personal work and professional work around the principles of improv and what we do when life does not go according to what we expect or what we have planned. What do we do? How do we find our way forward? And the cardinal rule of improv is this idea of yes and. And the idea behind yes and is one of those that's simple but not easy. Yes and simply means that we receive what life offers to us, whatever that is, the circumstances of our lives, we say yes to it. And the and is to build on that in some way. And so if we find ourselves in a situation that requires our best courage and our best discipleship and our best efforts, we move through that one step at a time, one yes and at a time. And I've talked to countless people about this idea of yes and what it says to me and what we always talk about is how we will find ourselves in different places in life, and we never could have predicted that that's where we would end up. And yet every individual step made sense. Every individual step got us to where we need to be, even if we never could have predicted that that's where that was. And I feel like when we live in a fearful culture, when we are experiencing fear and anxiety in our communities, in our congregations, in ourselves, in our families, it can be really hard. We can feel frozen in place, not knowing how to move forward. But if we can find one small step, one next right thing, then we can really move forward and find our way even through that fear. I'm reminded of that beautiful verse from 1 Corinthians in which Paul says, we see only a reflection, only in a mirror dimly. We see only in part. And that's what happens when we take one small step at a time. We find our way forward. And again, that beautiful example of Mary who says, here am I, the servant of the Lord, let it be with me according to your word. She could not possibly have known all of the little details of what was to come. She knew the promises of God, that God would be with her and that the Messiah had been promised and that amazingly she could be a part of that. But one step at a time, she made her way forward, and we do as well. And we've all had a lot of mighty practice with this with the recent pandemic. When we first began, we didn't know what we were facing. And maybe if we knew the fullness of how long we would be having our lives disrupted, we might not have believed it. We may not have wanted to even face it. But knowing a little bit at a time and taking one step at a time and learning what we needed to learn and reaching out in the ways we needed to, we found our way in some really hard, but also some really beautiful ways. And that is what it means to take one step at a time. We don't need to know the end point. We just simply need to know that God is with us and that God's promises are with us. We can take those steps and move forward as we need to, as Christ's disciples.